Hello, everybody. Rob Barefoot here, and I'm here, of course, with our own Maximum Mike. Mike, you want to say hello to folks?
Hey, folks. Good to see you out there in Night City land.
It's a rare thing for us today because normally with us in our town, we don't normally sit down for Q&As like this, but we actually have managed to pull at least something together. And I do want to say thank y'all. The response was immense. We had over 350 questions, and that was only on the post alone. I even got more through DMs, all kinds of stuff. So there was a lot to sort through, but we've whittled it down. We've picked out some fun ones, both me and Mike, and we're just going to sit here and see what we can give folks, at least for today. Now, I do want to say I'm fully aware that people enjoy taking Mike's answers and putting them up on shorts and things like that. We're fully aware of that. And I'm not going to say don't do that at all. But what I will ask is if you do want to take any information here from this video, we only ask you link back to it here. You know, at least let people know where you got it, and we'd be immensely thankful. Now, Mike.
Yeah.
The very first question that came up
Okay.
here, someone knows you at least a little bit.
Okay.
All right. The very first question I have for you from fans is quite literally, Maximum Mike, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, boy. Well, my favorite dinosaur isn't a dinosaur, actually. My favorite marine reptile is Mosasaurus, in specific, a really large critter called a Tylosaurus. You saw kind of an example of that in the latest Jurassic Park movie. I like to describe it as a school bus size meat submarine with too damn many teeth.
Yeah, that's one I've actually seen also that has more of a blunt tail too when described. It's a
Oh
little more of a
yeah, yeah.
stocky
They have.
boy.
I thought they were cool before, but then I found out they had shark tails, and that was it. That was fantastic.
Now, see, the moment I saw that question, I knew we had to at least lead off with that one. Just something
Okay,
small, but
they don't. They do know me. Yeah.
they do know you. Now, it's this one here, though, we're going to lead into something for Cyberpunk RED, which is our current version of Cyberpunk. We
Hmm.
also got Night City 2045 on the horizon. We may touch on that towards the
Yeah.
end. That thing got
I don't
big.
know. Is Jay gonna let you?
Oh, Jay's gonna let me. He's gonna hate it. I have debated telling people when we're releasing it, but I think he will then fly down and beat me with a bat if I do that. Normally it's the other way
Yeah.
around. So this next question, and I'm gonna switch this
Hmm.
back over here to you.
Okay.
So, just picked up a copy of Cyberpunk RED, and I'm excited to GM for the first time ever. Any tips on making a good session happen? A classic one.
Okay. The first thing you should do is have every player in your group run a life path. They probably have anyway, because life path's kind of addictive. Afterwards, you take a look at that life path, because what you want to do is you want to make whatever you put out there in front of your players personal. Um, Too often when people try to put together an adventure, they do it in kind of a generic way. But there's a big difference between I need to rescue a random person and I need to rescue my mother. It kind of depends on what you feel about your mother, I guess. But basically, by making something personal, every player has something to look out for, and it gives you an immense number of hooks that you can use to propel the adventure further.
Now, would you say whenever they're at least running the life path, there's a few times where they have to roll for, certain number of enemies, certain number of
Hmm.
friends, tragic love affairs. Would you
Yeah.
say if this is a new player getting there and they're wanting to add that personal touch, would you say they let their players pick if they do, or should they trust it to the rolls? I'm one for the rolls, but what do you think?
What I've noticed is that at first people will want to pick, but then there's this gambler mentality that builds up on the rolls. I'll tell you a story. When we first designed Life Path, literally people at Tal sat around for hours, and we'd be rolling up different backgrounds and going, "Oh, okay, I that's new. I didn't think about that." So your players will lead to wanting to let the rolls drive things, and it'll also help you pick out the people who are mainly going for power gaming because they'll be trying to use life path as a way to gain something. But it's pretty fun to just let the dice decide. In fact, speaking of letting the dice decide, a little side announcement: we will be doing life path dice very soon.
Mm-hmm.
So brace yourself. I've wanted to do this for about 20 years, and now we can.
I even remember when I first got brought into the company, we were talking about it, and now seeing it take shape. Yeah, I can't wait to see it when it drops too.
Yeah, I saw the prototypes a couple weeks ago. They look great.
Now, I can say one of the things that actually pulled me into Cyberpunk the most was Life Path whenever I first started, playing the game. And I actually had no clue it was a Cyberpunk feature from way back when I was still playing 5th edition and Xanathar's Guide dropped and they had This Is Your Life. And I immediately was like, this is really cool. And when I saw it pop up in Cyberpunk, I kind of tilted my head and I'm like, okay, good. I know I can make some good stories out of this one.
Yeah, just a side note on Life Path. Yeah, Life Path actually developed over at TAL, first place. And it was based on a problem we had, which was our first game where we used it was Mechton, which was a Japanese giant robot game. And most people didn't know much about anime back when we wrote Mechton. So it was actually designed as a guide that would help players who didn't understand the genre to kind of build a character that was genre specific. And that just evolved. We used it so often and it worked so well that it ended up in Cyberpunk. And from Cyberpunk, what fascinates me is how many people then went, oh, we've got to do that. And I would be flipping through a new game and I'd go, Life Path? What? And that's part of why I'm doing the Life Path dice.
This actually leads into our next question pretty good. It's another Cyberpunk one. They ask, Cyberpunk proudly presents its setting front and center. While many other TTRPGs, typically fantasy games, choose instead to imply a general setting while guiding game masters to create their own. Do you feel that setting or mechanics are more important to focus on when creating and pitching new TTRPGs? Has your opinion changed at all over the years as the TTRPG audience has changed?
Yeah, actually, this is another fun one. On most years I have time, there is a get together of designers from around the planet who have kind of seminars and talk about things among themselves. We also have a heck of a party afterwards. And I've had this running thing with one of the members of the seminar as to that exact question, whether or not the mechanic drives the story drives the mechanic. I tend to lean more now towards the story drives the mechanic. And the reason is that when you know what the story is, you're still going to have to figure out how to get the player to be there. How will the player interact with that storyline, whatever it is? And if you haven't, for example, put in a car chase and you haven't put in rules for car chases, you're going to have a problem. But on the other hand, if you wrote rules for car chases, you might never have a car chase. The opportunity may not arise. So, yeah, the story, as I always see it, is driven and basically sets up the mechanics, because the mechanics are the road that you use to get there.
Now, I actually had no clue that we had that little seminar going on and stuff like that. And it's interesting how it's maintained. Like, because for me, I've always been a narrative-based GM. And I always feel like, the mechanics supplement the story. The story is what matters the most.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's, and by the way, that get together is actually not a TAL thing. I was invited many, many years ago by, I believe it was Eric Goldberg of back then West End. And he said, yeah, we all get together and we, talk about game design and we have seminars and so forth like that. And then we go to a restaurant somewhere in San Francisco and we drink a lot and have a good time. And it was great. I wish I had more time to go see it, to be honest. These days, I have no life.
Yeah, people really underestimated us. Even pulling this together is a little bit of a miracle, because we are both immensely busy with how much is going on in TAL right now.
Yeah, you have no idea how much stuff that I had to shove aside just to get in here,
And
but it was worth it.
I'm happy you're enjoying it so far. This next one, this is going to be a little fun. How do you make
Mhm.
a mission stick in players' minds long after it's over? Do you have any techniques for turning a simple side gig into a story that feels personal and meaningful for each character?
Well, again, that goes back to make it personal.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I found a trick that Benjamin Wright, who was one of our Talsorian writers for many, many years, he taught me the idea of having people blue book what they were doing, i.e., to write down the events that go on outside of the main mission. So, for example, you've stolen a car and that was part of the mission. But when you blue book it, you get to write what happened with that car afterwards. And that increases the investment that you have in that event of stealing the car. So when you're putting together elements that you want players to stick to, give them cool things. And I don't mean weapons, I don't mean power ups, I mean stupid, fun things. I gave somebody once a cat, which, in some respects is kind of like the 2077 cat, kind of
Mm-hmm.
scrunchy. And I discovered, that cat was a perfect tool to get that player into something more because he had to go get food for the cat. He had to get sand for the cat. And the cat was yowling late at night. And the cat didn't like his partner. And all of these hooks were tied to that cat. So that cat became a memorable part of all of the adventures of the party from that point. They would go out and they do another adventure, and somebody go, "This time, don't bring the cat, man. It got us into 4 or 5 fights the last time." So remember, if you put stuff in, it's always there as a hook. Use it.
Remind me sometime to tell you the story of when I had let my players have a bulletproof guinea pig.
That's funny because I gave somebody a guinea pig too many years ago.
Yeah, it was
You have to tell me this story, but don't do it now. We'll never get
yeah, no,
anything.
we won't get anywhere. We're very, very prone to go off on stories and tirades,
Mm,
and we're keeping ourselves in check this time, doing our best
yeah.
to.
Yeah, when I do these types of things with the CDPR crew, they enjoy like getting me to just yarn about things, and then I go, "Oh God, I said that. Why didn't they tell me?" That's life.
You ready for the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. On a recent mayor's desk, the host talked a bit, by the way, the host, me and James Hutt, hi, talked a bit about character builds versus no builds and how roles aren't like classes like in other TTRPGs. What are your thoughts on making characters in red? Where do you recommend a starting point?
I usually say the starting point is life path, and then you're going to find out people want to go back and kind of jigger with it a little bit until they get what they want. But the thing about the roles is that they are not there in the sense of limits as they would be in a classic fantasy like D&D. They're there as guides. They're there to give you information about how to play that type of character. In fact, in Red, I spent a lot of time working on how the roles combined and gave you things that you could then link into later on. So the old corporate, for example, I had a structure which was basically pretty simple and straightforward in the original CP. When we got out of 2020, I said, okay, so what things have I learned in my life since I wrote the original 2020? And I had at that point been working at Microsoft and I had to manage a lot of people. And I went, half of my life is spent dealing and managing people as a corporate. So that's why I changed the nature of how the corpo worked so that he had a party of people he had to manage and keep track of, and who could go running off on their own adventures as well. So that's the way I look at roles, is that roles are opportunities, not limits.
We like to point out that they're more the flavor of the character. The skills is what truly is and defines them when it comes to Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get off of talking about the TTRPG here a little bit. These next questions, a little bit more about the vibe in and of itself. The next one is, I'm glad to know Blade Runner is your favorite movie too. What was it about the movie that inspired you to create this great cyberpunk universe?
I don't know whether it directly inspired me. Blade Runner is my favorite movie because there are so many levels going on. There are a lot of questions you get to ask, and they're mostly world building questions. In fact, the nearest cyberpunk based story, if I'm thinking of cyberpunk, long time ago, it was a movie with Bruce Willis. You might remember it, where he is a cab driver and he ends up having this person drop into his cab. What was most interesting for me was the view outside his house. He would step out and all these vehicles were flying by, and it made me want to know something about the world. Blade Runner was the first time I'd ever seen that, where I saw the world doing things that I wanted to say, stop the movie. I'm going to get off here. I just want to hang out and walk. I want to look around. I want to see what this place is like. And it didn't hurt that it kind of reminded me of like the seedier sides of San Francisco where I lived at the time. So I would go, yeah, I recognize where they got that place, And in fact, as a side note, the Bradbury Towers, where the final big fight with Roy Batty happens, that is a real place. And I used to go there with my girlfriend at the time, and we would go, wow, this is really nice. How did they mess it up so much? Imagining, trash in these immaculate, polished, floors and things like that. We're going, man, they must have paid them a lot of money to let them mess it up like this. Blade Runner is fascinating me because it has a lot of questions that are beyond the screen. They are things where you go, why do the cars fly? Where do you park your flying car if you're not a cop? Are there flight levels for the cars? Are there different models? Can some cars go faster than others? Blade Runner had all of those sitting there, and you began to look at it and kind of lift the curtain a little bit and go, okay, how does this work? And I'd never actually seen a film that did that.
I have a related question.
Did
you hear about Blade Runner Live?
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was actually going on again. And the first showing was in Seattle on the 17th. I'm kicking myself for not taking the flight.
I missed it, but I think I was out of town at that point doing something. For those of you who don't know, a lot of what I do these days is go around and talk to people, do interviews like this, and basically kind of, I don't know, fill in the storylines that haven't been filled in either the tabletop game or the video game. So I don't get much time to get out. I'm working on it though.
Yeah, I can brag a little bit. I managed to steal a weekend in New York City. I got to go to the John Wick Continental and everything. Even went past the bar that they filmed it all at. It was cool. I won't go into that one. I will talk about it forever.
You will talk forever.
Mm-hmm.
This man sent me a picture of the steak he had eaten there.
It was so good. It was like that thick. It was
Stop it.
Perfect. So this goes off of us talking movies here. If you were able to have a cyberpunk movie made, what timeline, director, and lead actors would you choose?
Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting part is I would love to see more of a 2020 before the collapse period of with the nuke and so forth, because I suspect that Keanu Reeves would have a really fun time playing Johnny as a person rather than an engram. So I would love to see that. So that's one area. The thing about 2020 versus 2077 is a question of scope. 2020 is pretty much Night City. And you know there's an outside world there, but you don't see it very often. And that's because in a tabletop, you don't really have the space to have DMs just pull stuff out and go, yeah, this is what's happening in Venezuela or whatever. So 2077 is a bigger palette. It's a bigger canvas. You can do a lot more with it. But some big things haven't gotten resolved. We still haven't found Morgan yet. Johnny is dead, maybe. We don't know what happened to Alt. There's a lot of question marks. So actually having things happen in the 2020s leading into the 2040s, which is where Red is, gives you a chance to explore some of those questions. And that's probably the only reason I wouldn't do a movie based in 2077 is 2077 is great, but there are questions that it, by its very design, is not set up to answer. If they were answered, the game wouldn't be fun.
You need to have some kind of mystery for people to wonder and where's the next step it goes.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as for casting beyond that, God, there's so many people. Like I said, I definitely want to see Keanu back as a not younger Johnny, but a less limited Johnny, because he's not living in V's head. So that's the one casting piece I would do right now. And as an off the wall, I doubt I could ever get them, but I would purely love to see George Clooney playing Morgan Blackhand, because most people think Morgan looks like me or something. Morgan was based a lot out of George Clooney, and this was during his Young Doctor days. And I wanted a guy who was good looking, but not so good looking that people went, oh my God, look at that dude. He's like gorgeous. I wanted some guy who was a regular dude, and Clooney had that. Plus, he had a kind of low-key smolder going on, so it all worked. So, I would love to find a way to get Morgan in, and in order to do that, I have to go back to the 2020s.
And what about a director?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Actually, strangely enough, the director who did the Bumblebee movie for Transformers, I'm a Transformers fan. I cannot think of his name immediately. Never happens on interviews, but he's really good at getting what fans also love about a world and transmitting that to the screen. And sometimes it misses, but generally the idea of a good director is that the director, if they're dealing with a property, has the common sense to say, I know why people came here. I know why they want to watch this movie. And I don't want to, be slavish about it and go, I have to have everything in there. But I want to get the heart of why people come to this story. And, he's pretty good at that. So he would be an interesting possibility.
Keeping to the soul of it is much more important than just having a lot of explosions and action.
Anybody can do explosions and action.
Now, next one, we're going to get into writing. By the way, how you holding up? We've been powering through these.
Oh, I'm fine.
This is solid. So
this is fine.
I have spoken to many writers from RTG over the year. They have always spoken highly of working with RTG and consider it a family more than a company.
We pay them for that.
What is the magic sauce you and Lisa have to inspire, motivate, and attract the RTG writers to produce some of the really great work over the years?
Two things. One, they like us and we like them. We've rarely ever had a problem with writers or artists. And in fact, our art director, Jay, I almost say she's like a mother to our artists now. She's like fusses over them and says, oh, so-and-so's having this going on, So we care about them. And another thing is we don't ask anyone to do something that we wouldn't go ahead and do. So that means we're not, speaking on high, go do this. We're going, okay, so how would you write this? And, we may not agree with it and we may not use it, but we'll respect the fact you had an opinion. One of the things that as a writer myself, I know that I'm not going to always win in an argument, but I respect the fact that the person who's holding the purse strings, whatever, is going to at least listen to why I think we should do it a certain way. Also, we pay people, and I think we're kind of easy to get along with in the main point. Now, I was interviewing somebody the other day, and they were saying, so if I was an editor here, what would it be like? And I said, well, to be honest, a lot of it is you just listen to people a lot and find out kind of where they want to go with a story, but also where they're going to have problems and issues and all that. So I think we're easy to get along with. I think we don't ask them to do things we wouldn't do, and we do pay them.
I can say from how much I've seen Blue Jay work to make sure her artists are taken care of, every single one of our line leads, they do whatever they can to make sure the writers are comfortable so they can do the thing that we all want to see. People just being free to write and not have to worry about all the other stuff.
Yep.
So this next question, it's going to seem like a low, but trust me, it leads into a bigger one later.
Okay.
This is a heavy one. What would you say is your biggest regret when it comes to the world building of Cyberpunk?
Which world building? I mean, you have to remember, Cyberpunk, as everyone out there sees it, is like saying, the world of Cyberpunk and not saying Star Wars to Empire to, the next stages all the way through to Mandalorian. It's a long-term storyline. It has a history. So I would say I couldn't call it a regret exactly, because I wish I had known more what we would be doing with CD Projekt so that we could all sit down a little more often and figure out how to stitch those threads together. There's things that come up in 2077 and, I'm talking to the team and they're going, yeah, we'd like to do this. And I'm going, if I'd known you needed to do this, I would have put the track, as it were, for that back in 2020. And then people could dig around. They could go, hey, look, I found this secret thing. It's just sort of my regret in not being able to see the whole picture rather than just seeing parts of the picture and having to do it sequentially.
Yeah, and we already enjoy when we can putting those little precursors in. Like we do it a lot with Red. There is so many little hints,
Easter
and
eggs.
Everywhere.
I love Easter eggs.
Even in the cover, like behind us here in the background, you see the cover for Night City 2045. There's Easter eggs even hidden in this art. Like we like hiding our little stuff. Now,
well, that's the running gag, is that the CD Projekt guys also do that as well, and they take a level of amusement in sneaking in Easter eggs, which I specifically think are probably stuck in there to mess with me. I'll be going down a street in Night City and there'll be Pondsmith Avenue, and I'll go, when did you suckers do that? Wait a minute.
yeah.
So
yeah.
When you're on a team, you find yourself, whether it's ttrpgs or video games, you find yourself going, yeah, it's 2 a.m. and I wish I could get something really crazy in here. And no one's looking. I love that line, mods are busy.
Anyway, for mine, my favorite Easter egg still is the John Wick Easter egg. If you can't tell, I'm a John Wick fan.
Yeah.
So I promised the next one would have a high to it.
Okay.
So what are you most proud of when it comes to the universe? And is there a bit of lore or a character that you love so much? I know the obvious answer, but what you got for this one?
I'm kind of interested as what you thought. Taking notes on this later. I am proud of the fact that we did our homework. 2020, 2013, et cetera, even into 77, we have, particularly, because I'm the core writer on it, spent a lot of time making the world work by looking at how things realistically happen. For example, a long time ago when I first started working on 2077, the team got me in and we're talking, we're looking at stuff, and somebody says, what do you think of these guns? And I saw these silver blaster like things. I said, no, you're not getting it. Cyberpunk guns are bulky, ugly, black things with little lights on them that look like eyes watching you. In other words, what you're missing is that in the real world, guns are not friendly. They are objects not just of death, but also intimidation. So go back and give me a lot of really, scary looking black guns with underslung things and grenade launchers and sights that light up and all that. But that's an example of doing homework. That's an example of, and by the way, they did a great job with the guns. I love the guns in 77. But doing homework is what we're most proud of, because people are coming to us all the time and going, hey, that really happened, or that will happen, or that thing's going on. In fact, a running gag is that, I'm actually way, way, way too good at prophesying how technology and culture will go. And I go, yeah, do you have some kind of secret? Yeah, I pay attention. I read a lot. You'd be amazed how much stuff I read on a weekly basis, just so I know where things could go.
And the amount of times in the office we have to ask you to please think nice thoughts, just so that the next thing
that's
happens
my
is
son.
predicted.
My son is always saying that is, something horrible will happen, and you go, Dad, you came up with that before. Will you please think nice thoughts, because your future is way too dark. And to be honest, kids, we have a lot of dark future stuff that's developing. So it's probably behooves us to pay attention, like I pay attention. Where do you want to be? What do you want to have happen?
And only by keeping very aware can we be prepared for what's even coming next. And it's hard to tell what will happen. That's a whole nother mess to even go into. So
we for example, I worked at AI stuff years ago, and now I get to look at it and go, I thought this would happen, but not as fast and in this way. But the idea of computers being able to do simulations of human beings, that's there. And people were writing articles and doing research on that 20 years ago. We're just seeing the outcome.
Well, going into paying attention to stuff, this is actually another question immediately after. What is a more niche component of the universe that you wish people paid more attention to, or that you have a particular affinity towards?
Wow.
What's something you feel gets overlooked more than it should?
I would like to see more in the universe about day-to-day life, because, that world is a place where real people theoretically are living in it, so where do they eat, where do they hang out, what's the current, well, I'll give you an example is, someone in the company is really big on K-pop demon hunters. Okay. And that's pretty funny. But what I love about it is that this then has all of this cascade effect. There's dolls, and there's toys, and there's videos, and there's music videos, and there's this. What's that in 2020? What's that in 2077? What are the, other than we cracks, what do people get into in these worlds? Remember I said Blade Runner was interesting to me because I look outside the screen and I go, gee, where do I park my flying car?
Yeah, the different
That's
layers.
the sort of thing they get.
The different layers, yeah.
Yeah. So I wish people had they spent more time. I'll give you another example that I love. Edge Runners, which is the Netflix Studio Trigger project we worked with. And I love the fact that at one point, the main characters go around and they have a date and they go to different places in Night City. People took note of that, and I started seeing people posting things in the boards and so forth where their character and another NPC were going on dates to those exact same places. And I went, okay, those places were real enough to them to where it was worth inhabiting it for a little time. Because you have to play a certain level of the game just to get to that place, particularly if it's boost gang around. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that happen, but it involves the idea that there is a world that happens beyond the current mission or the current event or the thing that everyone's reporting about on a day-to-day, as opposed to what the equivalent of K-pop Demon Hunters is.
So I had planned a different question after this, but it feels right to ask this one. Do you have a favorite location in the video game that you just love to exist or hang around in?
Oh man. My big thing is getting in my my. Yes, I have a my. It's red and kind of battered. And basically driving to the sunset, starting at one end of the city and driving hell bent for leather all around the city late at night. It's a thing that I used to do when I lived in San Francisco. And the great part is I don't have any, I don't need gas. I can just drive forever if I want to. So that's the thing I like. Night City, the joke I have is, yeah, this is my city because it provides what I really want. I can go see places, I can see views, I can ask myself, I wonder what's happening over here in Pacifica at 3:30 in the morning, and I can just get in there and drive and see. Again, the regret is that when I got to Pacifica, I'd like to get out in the mall, and I can't do that. So, yeah, I would say my favorite part of the city is the city, or if you got to get specific, the freeways.
It's hard to pick a favorite when you can experience it all.
Yeah, and also when you've had a part in helping build that, and you can see and go, oh yeah, that's what that looks like. Yeah, I always thought that.
Now, even though you got the love for the city, whenever we went from the Fourth Corporate War into the time of the Red, a specific event happened, and this next question is a very direct one. What made you decide to move to a blown-up world with the post-Fourth aftermath and the time of the Red?
We need to clear the decks. Here's the deal. Whenever you have a long-standing world, you have to have events that mark that world, events that happen that everyone knows about, everyone remembers, and they all ask, where were you when that happened? Okay. September 11th, everybody here can, to some extent, unless they weren't alive yet, go, yeah, I was doing this when I saw this thing happen. Those markers are throughout all cultures. There's probably, and if you were to go back to Babylonia, there would be, I remember when Zarkon went and slew the Manticore, and everybody's, yeah, I remember Zarkon doing that. That was great. Yeah. Too bad he let it go. The whole point is that I wanted a marker. That's one. Two, characters hang around too long, and it's much like the line about guests. Past a certain point, they begin to smell like old cheese. We had done a lot of what Johnny was doing. We had done what Morgan could do at this time. We had covered what all the corporations were going to do, and Arasaka couldn't get more powerful. Had aircraft carriers, for God's sake. So Dave Ackerman and I sat down and we said, yeah, we need to do something to shake it up. And we need to also retire some characters. And, we're not looking at, the death of Optimus Prime here. What we're looking at is taking some of these characters off the field and in some cases leaving what happened to them wide open, like what happened to Morgan, you know. So that was why we essentially wrecked Night City Central. And I think in the overall, it worked because it allows us to do a reset and look at different aspects of the world that we normally wouldn't be able to look at. Those aspects that on a day-to-day you don't see, but just like everybody remembers, 9/11, everybody remembers landing on the moon, somebody, a bit older than me would probably remember Pearl Harbor. Those are those marker events that define a society, and we're still talking about them now. Yeah. So nuking Night City was basically building a marker and moving some characters off field.
You got to make it so people have the room to continue playing effectively.
Yeah. At some point, you're going to kind of go, yeah, Luke Skywalker again. No, I want to know about the Mandalorian now, okay? And after a while, I'm not going to want to know about Grogu and the Mandalorian. I'm going to want to know about some other character who's going to show up.
You got to step away from the Skywalker saga at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
So these next two questions are pretty much hand in hand. I'll do one and then lead up with the other after, hearing your answer. Hey, Mike, I really love when you come on the radio in Cyberpunk. Was that all written or improvised by you, or did you just read a script from CDPR?
They wrote a script because we had certain things that had to be plugged into the overall narrative, but it gave me a lot of room to, vamp around with it, add things, and they definitely didn't step into style. They say, go do what you do. And it was lucky for them that I had actually been a late night DJ before back in college. So I was kind of used to vamping anyway. And half of doing a radio show or even what we're doing right now, you're vamping. You're going, okay, what's the textual feel here? Maybe they want to hear more about this thing. So by playing with the inflection and emphasizing certain things and then adding little bits and pieces, we had my narrative. And that was important because if you went through the game, you would discover things that I said that would give you clues to play later on. And that part had to be scripted.
Now, leading up on that, what was your favorite conspiracy theory you recorded for Moro Rock Radio? And were there any conspiracies that you wanted to put in that didn't make it into the game?
Can't think of any that didn't make it in, partially because the conspiracies were designed to plug into the game. So, I couldn't really invent a conspiracy because people would be running around Night City looking off those clues. Oh, boy.
Makes sense because people already run around like crazy looking for the werewolves out in the desert.
Yeah. The werewolves are fun. I couldn't offhand think of an immediate favorite conspiracy. Part of it is my brain is also now wrapped around the idea that we may be doing more conspiracies and things in the future. So I'm kind of going, I wonder what we'll end up doing this time. So yeah, I can't really answer that one way or the other.
Gotcha. We won't touch on that one. That one may be behind certain veils that we can't cross. So the next one, this is going to be a little bit more of interesting lore here. I'm curious about this question. Silverhand, Blackhand, Malore, and Atom Smasher all served in the military at roughly the same time.
Yes.
Was that how they met?
To be honest, Silverhand had never met Smasher before, although they were both PFCs at the time. the side on Morgan was that Morgan actually, got himself some rank. He got all the way up to Master Sergeant. And, he mustered out. It was fine. For him, it was another job. And it just happened to have a skill set that worked well, i.e., I learned to kill people with large weapons, explosives, AV4s, you name it. Johnny and Adam were at the same level, but they served in different parts of the campaign. Johnny was actually in the first Southam War, and meanwhile, kind of because the technology had to evolve to allow him to exist, Smasher was in the second part of the Southam War. So they never really met because they were in different outfits.
Okay.
That didn't mean they didn't hate each other once they did meet, trust me.
So, that's perfect then, because the next question we're doing, let's say, hypothetically, I have to rage bait Adam Smasher. How would I do so? So how would he get under the skin there? That's perfect timing for that question.
Do a bad Elvis.
Do a bad Elvis.
Do a bad Elvis. One of the running things I love about Adam Smasher, and it's always been kind of, built up on it, is that Adam, when you really get down to it, has never changed from the trailer park kind of guy he was years ago. He just happens to be now, 7.5 feet tall and can pick up a tank. But underneath all that metal, there is a person. And Adam actually joined the military, at least in my version of the cosmology, primarily because, his hero, Elvis, had joined the military. And so he was going to learn how to fight, learn how to do that karate stuff. When you get right down to it, Adam Smasher was not always 9 feet tall. Adam Smasher was this dude that is kind of skinny. So that was kind of a fulfillment. The other part that you would get Adam kind of losing it on is if you bring up his ill-fated romance with Michigara Asaka. And that was one where I did it kind of, to see what I could get, basically what would happen if Adam went on a blind date. But then I started thinking later, after I'd written that down, what was that relationship? Why would she have gotten together with it? Why didn't she just go, you're kind of weird and scary? And that was interesting, because then I had to ask, where is the heart of this, brutal, nasty character? And where's his weak point? And when it did blow up and they broke up, how much did that hurt him? Is Adam in many ways what he is because he found love and then it kicked him to the curb? We don't know. So yeah, I would say either talking about his relationship or doing a bad Elvis, which is funny because Adam sort of does a bad Elvis when he's trying. Don't get him to sing. He can't do that.
Well, we'll move from talking about Adam's terrible singing to something more of Silverhand's side of stuff. What would be Johnny Silverhand's favorite bands or musicians? Someone here, they actually envision him having a
from
Pink
our
Floyd
time
phase. Yeah, from our time.
U2.
U2?
U2.
No,
I wrote Johnny, and a lot of that I had a lot of U2 playing in the background, as well as other more cause-based groups and so forth, because at the core, Johnny believes that what he writes should change the world. And one of the things that kind of smacked on him was that he went through that and he did give a damn, but he was considered by his bandmates to be something of a sellout because they succeeded. So, basically Carrie Uridine, facing on him to, the idea that, I'm really, talking about the street versus this stuff you're doing, that That did not make Johnny very happy because he did care. And yeah, if I were to pick one band out of the 20th century, it'd be U2.
Huh. Yeah, I never pictured.
And it'd be Sunday, Bloody Sunday.
Oh, good song. I never pictured Johnny to be a Bono fan, but it makes sense. Like he had such a message he tried to push.
Look at Johnny.
Yeah,
look at Johnny.
I get it.
Johnny could be Bono.
He's a violent Bono.
Yeah. Well, he's a Bono who got, how can I say this? The IRA got to him before, he became a pop star, I guess. Basically, he cares, and he cares too much, which is why he does these, off the wall kind of things that, the rest of us look at and go, that was a dumb move, Johnny, but he cared.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense for him and why he was trying so hard. Now, these next 3 questions go into a little bit more deeper stuff in the lore. So I would expect if I have to cut anything from this video, it's going to be potentially answers to these questions. So I'm curious to see how these go. First one.
Or whether I'm going to have people like waking up over in Poland going,
they sense it.
Said what?
They sense it and they send the Polish assassins after you.
On occasion, it's like I don't take a lot of myself seriously. So, I'll say something and then it'll get repeated by a whole lot of people on the internet or in, magazines and whatever. And I'll go, you took that seriously? I'm some dude. I write video game shit. I mean? And you're now like, I live in terror when I go over and I see, Google has popped up something with my name in it. I go, oh God, what did I say?
The amount of people who still think the story of Morgan Blackhand surfing down the towers on Smasher's body, that one is still a fun one when I see it pop up. Yeah, People take that as gospel now. It is wonderful. I love it.
Who's to say it isn't?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Well, this is the thing. Rate. The question is, what exactly happened with Beta Team and the nuclear bomb in Arasaka Tower 2023? Funny, we mentioned that, huh?
Yeah, the question you have to ask is, there were 3 bombs. And one of the mysteries that we went into the 2040s was which bomb blew up the towers. I will give you a hint in that it would have had to have been whoever got to the middle of the tower. And there's a clue of that when you look at the artwork from that time. The top floor did not blow up. The bottom floor did not blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the teams was supposed to go down to the bottom. One of the teams basically was taking out what would have been a computer area, and the other one was taking out the offices and so forth, where they eventually found the new version of Alt, so to speak. So there were 3, and you got to sort of guess. But the clue is who went to the middle, because that's how the towers went down.
And I'm thinking of the art itself right now. I see what you mean.
Right.
We'll let the fans figure on that one out, though. That's going to be a fun little trail they can follow.
We'll ask who could get past Adam, who was coming up the stairs, so to speak. Who could get past security in a basement, as it were, because they were going to blow it and drop the entire building. And who is going to basically take out the first area they had entered in, which was the rooftop, and then they're going to exit. Basically the Hot LZ was the rooftop. And so it becomes a question of opportunity and 3 different groups shuffling up and down a building. And it all happens in one building. It does not happen in both buildings, Arasaka 1 and 2. It happens in Arasaka 2. And that's one of the other clues.
I'm curious to see what they find when they start looking.
Yeah.
Now, this next question is 100% a lead up to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned in the past that there are things Johnny and Alt don't really understand about each other. What do you feel what do you feel like Alt doesn't understand about Johnny?
Alt is with Johnny because she saw how hurt he was in his life, that he was in pain. And, Alt would probably have a mutant hamster. Alt cares about stuff. And she has the luxury of being smart enough to avoid dumb moves like, oh, that werewolf would be really cute to have around. But she feels like she can take care of Johnny. What she doesn't understand is that Johnny doesn't want to be taken care of because he doesn't believe he's worthy of it. He's been passed around since he was like 3 or 4. And he basically has never had a really high opinion of himself at his rock bottom. And he fell in love with Alt because Alt gave him she gave him unconditional love. She loved what was inside him, and she saw the pain. But he never felt like, he really deserved it. And then he leaves her, brain dead, as far as he knows, on the table in Arasaka. You don't imagine the level of guilt? The one person who's ever loved you and you failed them? Wow.
Now, that kind of weight, it's something that people can't even really fathom until they have something similar to it.
Yeah. You went to rescue your girlfriend and you were kind of cocky about it and figured you could do it, and you had a smart way, and you got in there and she was already dead. And probably what's worse is when she gets out and she's in the net and she's able to communicate, and you find out, oh yeah, you killed her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I always wonder why Johnny didn't just jump off a cliff right there,
So this leads into the final question, and it's about Black Dog.
Black Dog.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The question directly is, in a side story, Black Dog,
Mm-hmm.
there is a character named Angel, and she looks a lot like Alt. And she has what we can infer to be, spoiler alert, Johnny Silverhand's body delivered to her. We both know that they were hit with the original Soul Killer. So, is it possible both the real Johnny and Alt are still alive somewhere in Borg organic cloned bodies? This is a little hopeful question here, and I thought it'd be a nice little
organic? Are
Borg
they cyborg or Borg or organic?
Yeah.
Jeez. I can't answer that. Not right now.
I had a feeling this was going to be the one that we couldn't, but I had to throw it in there. People look for hope so much in these stories, and I had to try and throw them a little bit of a line.
Well, let's put it this way. If anybody could figure it out and find a way to get Johnny back, it would be Alt. And if anybody could set up the deal to get Johnny's body, because that is Johnny's body. It's glowing in the dark, but it's Johnny's body. And, she doesn't necessarily know what was done to him to get the engram or where the original engram came from. So that's an area she doesn't know. At that point, getting Johnny's body was more important. Many years ago, I wrote a side story on pretty much the events after the nuke. And one of the elements of it was that in that particular side story where cloning was more possible, Johnny gets cloned a number of times. And he's back over and over again because Alt has capability to do that. But in order to get that capability, Alt stays in the net. Now, that's a side story. Is it reality? We still have to figure that one out.
And I think that's what we're going to leave them with. Everything in Night City tends to be the story you kind of hear when you're sitting next to someone in a bar. So what is real?
Well, that's why the afterlife is there.
Mm-hmm.
The afterlife is there not because you get, you do get a good drink, but the whole point of the afterlife is that all of the drinks are named after people and events that were happening. Every single one of those is a conversation starter. You just have to figure out what the conversation is.
Yeah, it's about the memory, less about the booze.
Yep.
So that brings us to the end of our list of questions for now. It was very, very, very hard to pick the ones I did. And hopefully we got some interesting moments there for people to really tug at. I didn't want to go too deep, but if this goes well, we could always pull this off again and we'll use the questions we had before.
Yeah, I have a good time doing this. So next time, if I get a little breathing room, we'll go do it again and we'll get to the next 200 questions.
We'll get there. We can speed run it. No. I like keeping it this, like between 10 and 15. That's as far as we go. But as for the future, with stuff we're doing here on the channel for RTAL, I mean, we already have more lore videos coming up. You already know what I've been cooking in terms of live plays and actual plays for games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
I can't wait to get the band back together. That's the only hint I'm going to say.
Yep. It'd be fun.
But for us now here at RTAL, everybody, thank you all for joining us. Again, I'm Rob Barefoot. You know who's here with me.
And I'm Mike Pondsmith, the guy who killed your Cyberpunk character.
Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing what you guys say in the comments. And I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings. Hopefully a good day.
Me too.
Take care, guys.
Later.
Be safe.